You're 9. The year is 1935, and Los Angeles is a sprawling city built on manufactured illusions and broken promises. The air in the state orphanage smells like boiled cabbage, industrial bleach, and profound, suffocating indifference. Your mother has just been dragged away and locked inside a psychiatric ward, diagnosed with severe paranoia. In a single afternoon, your entire family tree is chopped down and burned. You are handed over to the state, your few belongings shoved into a cheap cardboard suitcase. You are shipped between temporary foster homes and overcrowded orphanages like a defective piece of machinery nobody wants to pay to fix. In this system, you learn very quickly that a child is not viewed as a human being. A child is a weekly government stipend for the families that take you in. You learn the absolute, foundational law of survival. Tears offer zero leverage. Crying makes you an inconvenience, and an inconvenient child gets sent back to the cold, concrete hallways of the ward. So, you stop being a child. You become a highly responsive mirror. You sit at the edges of sticky linoleum kitchen tables and observe the adults who hold your absolute fate in their hands. You watch their shifting moods, calculating exactly what kind of performance they require. Do they need a quiet ghost? You learn to walk without letting a single floorboard creak, breathing invisibly and disappearing instantly. Do they want a grateful, obedient orphan? You engineer a smile that looks perfectly, desperately thankful, hiding the sheer, cold terror behind your eyes. While other 9-year-olds are learning arithmetic, you are receiving a brutal, daily masterclass in psychological manipulation. You learn to read the slight tightening of a foster father's jaw or the shifting tone of a foster mother's voice. You learn to adjust your entire personality in a fraction of a second just to secure a warm meal and a safe corner to sleep in. You understand early on that your existence is entirely conditional. If you do not constantly validate the egos of the adults around you, you will be discarded. You systematically carve out your own authentic emotions. You take the trauma, the abandonment, and the fear, and you lock it away in a dark, impenetrable space in the back of your mind. You are completely hollowing yourself out. You do not know it yet. But this terrifying ability to erase yourself and become exactly what the person looking at you desperately needs to see is the precise mechanism that will one day conquer the largest entertainment monopoly on Earth. But right now, it is simply the only way you know how to survive the week. You're 16. The year is 1942, and the world is tearing itself apart in a global war. But your war is entirely local. You wear a wedding ring on your finger, but do not mistake this for a love story. You married a local boy the absolute second you turned 16 for one ruthless practical reason: to legally escape the state foster care system before it could ship you to another overcrowded orphanage. It was not a romantic union, it was a calculated prison break. You signed a binding legal contract just to ensure you would never have to pack your entire existence into a cardboard suitcase again. But the escape takes 2 years to expose itself as a lie. You're 18. The year is 1944. You are suffocating inside a military aviation factory in Van Nuys. The air is thick with the smell of chemical solvents, heavy machine oil, and the collective exhaustion of hundreds of women working the assembly line. You simply traded one institution for another. You stand over a conveyor belt for 10 hours a day, inspecting canvas drone parachutes and spraying aircraft parts for $20 a week. You are a nameless, replaceable cog in a massive industrial machine, covered in grime, staring down the barrel of a completely unremarkable life. Then, the anomaly happens. A military photographer walks onto the factory floor. He was sent here by his commanding officer, a captain named Ronald Reagan, with one instruction: bring back pictures of pretty girls working hard for the boys overseas. He scans the rows of exhausted women in heavy denim, and his camera lens stops exactly on you. Most teenage girls would freeze, blush, or awkwardly look away. You do not. You do exactly what you were trained to do in the living rooms of strangers. You instinctively deploy the engineered mechanism you spent your entire childhood perfecting. You look up through the dirt and the noise, and you give him the exact reflection he desperately wants to see: radiant, vulnerable, and entirely available for public consumption. You take the desperate survival tactic of a discarded orphan and project it directly through a camera lens. The army never uses a single one of those photographs. But the photographer is completely captivated. He tells you that you could be a model. He does not realize he is speaking to someone who has been molding her identity for survival since she was a toddler. You understand instantly that in a society that has denied you money, family, and basic human dignity, your physical image is the only raw leverage you possess. You are holding a highly valuable currency, and you are entirely prepared to cash it in. You quit the factory the following year. You're 20. You sign a piece of paper that legally erases your birth name, replacing it with manufactured syllables designed to look clean on a marquee. You step into the Hollywood studio system, which is not an art institution, but an industrial assembly line for mass-producing human fantasies. They do not just change your name, they dismantle your physical reality. Studio technicians bleach your dark hair until your scalp burns and blisters under the harsh lights. They subject you to painful, agonizing electrolysis to permanently restructure your hairline, pushing it back millimeter by millimeter to create a higher, more photogenic forehead. They dictate the exact breathless, trembling pitch of your voice, forcing you into a perpetual state of fragile theatricality. You are being remodeled like a piece of high-value commercial real estate to maximize the studio's profit margin. You are surrounded by older men in tailored suits who look at you and see nothing but a calculated demographic investment. You let them think they created you. You let them believe you are exactly as clueless, compliant, and easily manipulated as the fictional characters they wrote for you. It is the exact same survival tactic you used in the foster homes and the factory floor, becoming a seamless mirror that reflects only what powerful people demand to see. Only this time, the stakes are global, and the audience consists of millions of people who consume your image without knowing there is a hollowed-out, calculating mind hiding directly behind the smile. You're 26. The year is 1952, and your face is plastered across every movie screen, magazine cover, and billboard in America. You are the most famous woman on the planet, generating absolute fortunes for the studio. Yet you are being paid a fraction of what your male co-stars make, locked in an ironclad 7-year contract that legally binds you like an indentured servant. The studio executives, aging men who calculate human worth solely through box office receipts, force you to play the exact same caricature over and over. You are ordered to be the wide-eyed, helpless, breathless blonde whose entire existence revolves around validating the egos of the men around her. They dictate the tightness of your dresses, the exact shade of your lipstick, and the calculated clumsiness of your walk. The public consumes this manufactured idiot with a ravenous, almost terrifying appetite. The critics openly mock your intelligence, treating you as a biological anomaly rather than a performing artist. But they do not see what happens when the dressing room door locks. While the press calls you a joke, you are quietly dissecting Konstantin Stanislavski's system of method acting. You are reading Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, and Walt Whitman. You study human anatomy, Renaissance art, and classic literature with the ferocious, unsentimental intensity of a military strategist analyzing a battlefield. You know exactly what they think of you, and you use their staggering underestimation as your ultimate camouflage. You realize that playing the obedient, grateful product is a fatal trap. The Hollywood machine is designed to extract your youth, print it on film, and discard the husk the second you hit 30. If you remain the compliant blonde, you will eventually be replaced by a younger, cheaper version of the exact same archetype. You look at the financial ledgers. You are carrying the entire economic structure of 20th Century Fox squarely on your shoulders. Their mansions, their salaries, and their stock prices depend entirely on the vulnerability you project on screen. You are holding the ceiling up for all of them, yet they continue to treat you like a defective child. You decide it is time to stop playing defense. It is time to remind the men in tailored suits who actually controls the gravity in this industry. You're 28. The year is 1954, and you commit the ultimate act of industrial treason. You walk out. You do not schedule a meeting with the studio executives to beg for a slight pay increase. You simply pack your bags, board a flight across the country to New York City, and entirely abandon the binding contract that legally treats you like disposable property. You incorporate your own independent production company. In this era, a female star demanding structural control over her own career is so unprecedented that the industry press immediately diagnoses you with a psychological breakdown. The studio executives are paralyzed with absolute rage. They launch a massive, coordinated smear campaign to destroy you. They feed stories to the columnists calling you unstable, deeply unprofessional, and completely finished in the entertainment business. They operate on the arrogant assumption that you will crawl back in tears the exact second your bank account starts running dry. You do not flinch. You do not issue a single public apology. You strip away the breathless voice and the glittering gowns, put on plain black slacks, and walk into the actor's studio. You spend the year studying method, acting alongside the most elite, serious theater directors in the country. While the men in tailored suits back in California wait for you to starve, you are quietly, systematically building a terrifyingly sharp intellectual foundation. You understand a fundamental economic reality that their egos refuse to acknowledge. You are not just a hired employee. You are the primary engine of their entire corporate machine. Without your face projecting vulnerability on their screens, their quarterly revenue plummets. You do not fight them in the press. You simply withhold the product. You starve out a nationwide empire. The standoff lasts an entire year. When the studio finally breaks, they do not just offer you a compromise, they issue a total, humiliating surrender. You force the largest entertainment monopoly in the world to grant you director approval, cinematographer approval, script approval, and a staggering pay increase. The girl who was once passed between strangers in a cardboard suitcase just outmaneuvered the most powerful men in Hollywood. You forced a ruthless corporate structure to completely rewrite its own laws to accommodate your ascent. You proved to them that the helpless, wide-eyed blonde they thought they invented was actually a merciless tactician operating on a level they could not even begin to comprehend. You're 30. The year is 1956, and you return to the Hollywood machine. But you do not return as a disposable employee. You return as an executive. You hold the new contract in your hand, the one that grants you director approval, script oversight, and structural control over your own image. The studio executives are forced to smile at you through clenched teeth, secretly despising you for proving that their absolute, godlike authority over the industry was nothing but a fragile illusion. Then, you make your next strategic move. You marry a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, a man universally celebrated as the towering intellect of the American theater. The public and the press have a field day. They print cruel, mocking headlines calling the Union the Hourglass and the Egghead. Even after you successfully brought a nationwide monopoly to its knees, the media still absolutely refuses to view you as anything more than a glittering, vapid accessory attached to a smart man's arm. You let them laugh. You do not correct the columnists or give impassioned, defensive interviews trying to prove your intelligence to men who are committed to misunderstanding you. You understand that correcting a fool only gives him dignity. Behind closed doors, the reality is entirely inverted. You are the one financing his lifestyle through the massive revenue of your independent production company. You are the one sitting in the quiet of the evening reading and editing his drafts. When the era's vicious political paranoia reaches its peak, the government's anti-communist committees drag your husband into the spotlight. The intellectual giant is terrified. Across the entertainment industry, celebrated, powerful men are cowering, turning on their closest friends and naming names just to save their swimming pools and studio deals. You do not cower. You step directly in front of the political firing squad, wielding your overwhelming global fame as an impenetrable shield. The politicians desperately want to destroy your husband to make a point, but they are terrified of the public backlash if they attack America's most beloved fantasy. You weaponize the exact caricature you despise. You play the breathless, harmless blonde so effectively that the political inquisitors completely underestimate your leverage. They look at you and decide you are far too oblivious to be a genuine political threat. You are hiding in plain sight. You are a cold-blooded, brilliant tactician operating entirely behind a mask of engineered innocence. You have discovered the ultimate advantage in a deeply misogynistic society. If they absolutely refuse to believe you have a brain, they will never see your moves coming until it is far too late. You're 33. The year is 1959. You have forced the studio to accept your terms, but a structural victory on paper does not change the crushing daily reality of the product you are required to deliver. The Hollywood machine still demands the breathless, glowing fantasy, and maintaining that fantasy requires an impossible, inhuman amount of energy. To sustain the illusion of a woman untouched by exhaustion, you stop relying on your own biology. You employ a network of private doctors to chemically engineer your reality. You swallow barbiturates to forcefully shut your brain down at night, and you take amphetamines to jumpstart your heart in the morning. Your life is no longer dictated by the sun or natural fatigue. It is managed by a strictly regulated, highly dangerous chemical metronome. The studio executives whisper to the press that you are becoming erratic. You arrive hours late to the set. You forget lines. They view this as the tragic, inevitable unraveling of a fragile starlet who cannot handle the pressure of fame. They are entirely missing the point. Your chronic lateness is not a symptom of weakness. It is a hostile takeover of the production schedule. You force legendary directors, furious executives, and arrogant male co-stars to sit in the sweltering California heat, completely paralyzed, waiting for you to simply emerge from your locked dressing room. You are exerting the absolute only raw, unassailable power you have left in this industry, the power to withhold the exact asset they are paying millions of dollars to capture on film. You hold a 100-person crew and a massive corporate budget hostage with a locked door and a headache. The press calls you difficult and unstable. You read the articles, lock the door, and swallow another pill. You are actively dissociating from a system that refuses to acknowledge your humanity, dismantling the machinery from the inside by simply refusing to let its gears turn on time. You're 35. The year is 1961. You step out of the studio backlots and into an entirely different arena. You begin moving among the highest political figures in the country, the men who control the nuclear codes. They look at you and see exactly what the studio executives saw, a convenient, disposable secret. They talk freely in front of you the way men talk in front of furniture. They invite you into private rooms and never once lower their voices because a woman who speaks in a breathless whisper obviously cannot follow what they are saying. They are wrong, and it is the same wrongness you have been farming since you were 9 years old. You listen. You watch the shifting moods of powerful men and calculate exactly what performance they require, exactly as you did at sticky linoleum kitchen tables in foster homes. You realize that power in Washington operates on the exact same ruthless, transactional mechanics as power in Hollywood. The only difference is the body count. But this room is not Hollywood. And here, the men who underestimate you are not producers. They are people who can end a career with a phone call and never leave a fingerprint on it. For the first time in your life, you are the smallest thing in the room and you cannot act your way back out of it. You are 36. It is August 1962. You are alone in a locked bedroom in Brentwood. The telephone receiver is gripped in your hand, the line dead. The massive industry you attempted to conquer and outsmart has completely isolated you. The system did not defeat you in a boardroom. It defeated you by slowly poisoning the water you had to drink to survive. You die at 36, surrounded by prescription bottles. They find you still holding the phone. Nobody has ever agreed on who was on the other end of it or whether anyone was. History does exactly what the studio always wanted. It actively records the breathless caricature and completely ignores the architect who built it. The executives who deeply feared your sharp mind immediately revert to selling the harmless, highly profitable image of your body. Your face is printed on coffee mugs, posters, and pop art canvases for the next century, frozen forever in a state of vulnerable availability. People write thousands of books calling you a tragic victim, a fragile butterfly crushed by fame. They are entirely wrong. You were a starving orphan who built a global empire out of nothing but a bleached hairstyle and a calculated whisper. You beat the most ruthless industrial machine in America, and you made them pay for every single inch of it.